You violated protocol. We have no choice but to let you go. That's what he said. Blunt, tidy, like I was just another number quietly erased from a spreadsheet. He expected a reaction. Instead, I signed the paperwork, walked out, and left behind a silence that said more than any outburst ever could. 7 days later, I knocked on that same conference room door. The familiar voice greeted me, this time with hesitation. What are you here for? I smiled. Let me in. You'll find out soon enough. My name is Marianne Doyle. I'm 52 years old. For the past 19 years, I've worked at Virabelle, a nationwide chain of affordable cosmetic stores, specifically at store number 041 in Portland. I started as a night shift floor associate, moved to backroom logistics, then inventory, and eventually became the person who quietly ran all the behind-the-scenes operations. I've double-counted serum bottles at midnight, trained new hires like they'd one day replace me, stayed quiet when the budget was cut, and filled in for 3 people without a single complaint. I never fought for credit. I never tried to stand out. I just tried to do things right and do them well. What I didn't realize was that being good at your job can make you a threat to the wrong kind of person. Gavin Rhodes, the new store manager, he came in from another district, young, ambitious, fluent in KPI speak, and addicted to PowerPoint graphs. To someone like Gavin, I was a liability, long tenured, trusted by staff, and entirely unbothered by office politics. And anything you can't control eventually becomes something you need to remove. 3 months into Gavin's tenure, the vendor discount on one of our regular supplier orders suddenly increased by 5%. I checked the system. The final approval? Under my login. Strange. I didn't remember signing off on anything at 11 p.m. I emailed corporate operations. No finger pointing, no drama. Just requesting a review of order number X. They responded 3 days later. Thank you, Ms. Doyle. We've noted your concern and will address it through standard procedure. Please refrain from escalating or sharing this information further. And so, I stayed quiet. Not out of fear, but because I wanted to see what they'd actually do. I sent 3 more emails over the course of a month. All of them ended with the same hollow phrasing, the kind of wording designed to stall, not solve. I felt disappointed, but more than that, I felt trapped, because sending too many emails without permission can make it look like you're going around the chain of command, and not everyone understands that I wasn't trying to stir things up. I was just trying to keep the system from collapsing and keep myself from sinking with it. Eventually, I stopped sending emails altogether. Who knew? Maybe Gavin had friends at corporate. After all, it's not every day a guy gets handed a store manager role at that age without some kind of backing. That alone made me cautious. That Thursday morning, the sky was clear. Sunlight cut through the shelves lined with the winter lip balm displays. I was mid-check on our tester count when my phone buzzed conference room B. 10 o'clock. Mandatory. No subject line. No greeting. Just Gavin's name at the bottom. I didn't need to ask what it meant. I grabbed my notebook, not because I planned to write anything, but because I'd never walked into a meeting empty-handed. Claire from HR was already inside, sitting still, face neutral, eyes dodging mine. Gavin stood by the file cabinet, arms crossed, spine slightly curved like he was bracing for impact. We've reviewed recent purchase approvals, he began. There are some inconsistencies with current protocols. He slid a white envelope toward me, still using that polite administrative tone. Effective today, Marianne, we're terminating your employment. These are the formal documents. Claire will guide you through the rest. I sat down, opened the envelope, flipped through each page like I hadn't already anticipated every word, every number. Gavin stood motionless. Claire waited. The pen sat untouched between us. I signed, clean, unshaken. Then I stood, slid the envelope back across the table, and walked toward the door. No one said, "Good luck." No one pretended it was anything other than what it was. And I didn't look back, not once. I didn't need to. Because Gavin didn't know. I wasn't the one being erased from the system. I was the only one still holding the original copy of the truth. During my so-called transition period, I still arrived first and left last. I still met with department heads, still fixed the inventory discrepancies Gavin's new system couldn't even detect. I still stood beside Luis at the display shelf, walking him through how to verify batch codes, still peeled off misprinted labels on body lotion shipments, still bent down to pick up fallen testers at the end of aisle 3 like it was muscle memory I couldn't unlearn. And Gavin? He started watching me differently. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I could see it in the way he held his gaze. Cautious, calculating, a faint sneer behind the professionalism. At first, he assumed I was quietly accepting defeat. He was used to people who fought back, raised their voice, threw chairs, anything loud enough to justify getting rid of them. I wasn't giving him that. I kept submitting reports on time. I even helped him double-check the data for his upcoming presentation to the board. And that, more than anything, made him nervous. I saw him start conducting random checks on purchase orders I'd approved 3 months prior. I noticed Megan from accounting printing out contracts we'd finalized in Q1 on Gavin's request for an internal audit. Julia from logistics, blunt as ever, pulled me aside one afternoon and said, "Hey, just so you know, Gavin's been asking about those vendor D orders you signed off on. He's digging through everything." I nodded. "Let him dig." What Gavin didn't realize was that he wasn't tracing a trail I was trying to hide. He was walking through a system I had built. Every step, every document, every number had a mirror and a backup. I once told Luis, half jokingly, when a system's clean enough, anyone trying to find dirt ends up staring at their own reflection. The next day, Gavin caught me in the hallway and asked, his tone oddly casual with a hint of bait, "Are you working on anything outside your usual duties lately? You've been a little quiet with the team." I smiled. "I'm still doing what needs to be done, and maybe the reason I'm quiet is because I'm listening more carefully than before." After a few more failed attempts at finding fault, Gavin changed tactics. He started getting vague, never said my name, never pointed directly, but the air began to thicken with suggestion. In an internal meeting, he tossed out a line, casual on the surface. "Some past decisions may not have followed best practice. We'll need to review everything thoroughly." In the break room, I overheard whispers from the newer staff. "Someone messed up a bunch of orders last quarter. Now Gavin's fixing it. Wasn't it that warehouse manager from before?" I didn't respond. I didn't correct them. Because here's the truth. The more you defend yourself, the more people think there's something worth defending. Gavin didn't need evidence. He just needed to plant a doubt, then let it spread like ink in water. I used to think the cruelest thing was being pushed out of a place you gave your life to. But I was wrong. What's crueler is watching the people who used to trust you start hesitating when they look you in the eye. The announcement went out at 8:03 a.m. on Friday. I know because Daniel Hawk had sent me a draft 30 minutes earlier to give it one final look. A small gesture, but enough to tell me they didn't just trust what I could do. They trusted how I would step into this role. Marianne Doyle, Regional Director, Northwest Division. The memo was clean, measured, and unmistakably firm. Anyone reading it would have stopped at the final line. She will directly oversee all 18 locations in the Northwest, including Verabel number 041. It didn't take an hour for the messages to start flooding in. Luis from Electronics. "Marianne, is this real? I'm in the break room. Gavin's on the phone losing his mind." then Emily from accounting. He says there's a mistake at HQ, but you're literally named in the announcement. I didn't respond, not because I was being dramatic, but because I was standing inside a small furniture shop in Fremont, running my fingers across the seam of a charcoal armchair I just picked out for my new apartment near the Seattle office. A space with a view of Lake Union. Just enough room to review store reports. And just far enough that Gavin would never walk through the door. I thought back to my first time in that conference room on the 18th floor at HQ, polished wood floors, sterile overhead lighting, and the smell of over-roasted coffee from a machine behind frosted glass. Not the kind of coffee I was used to. At the store, I drank coffee to survive. Here, they drank it to negotiate. Lydia Monroe did most of the talking, but it was Daniel Hawk who watched. He didn't take notes, just sat back slightly, one hand resting on a folder, eyes steady but razor sharp, the kind of man who's read your whole file, including the things you never wrote down. "We know you're the one who flagged those internal irregularities," Lydia said, her tone so calm it could have been mistaken for an invitation to tea. "And we also know you didn't do it to climb any ladders." I didn't answer, because she was right. Daniel leaned in then, getting to the point. "You built the most effective inventory control system in the entire division in just under 3 years. Store number 041 has the lowest attrition rate and the second highest revenue per square foot out of all 18 locations. And somehow, you've never once been featured in an internal newsletter." I chuckled, softly. The one time I'd been asked to write something for the company bulletin, Gavin edited it beyond recognition and slapped his name in the byline. After that, I stopped volunteering. Daniel folded his hands. "We need someone who understands the ground level, without being buried in it. Someone who knows processes and people. Are you ready?" I looked down at the folder they'd handed me. Director of Northwest Regional Operations, 18 stores, site schedules, salary, 85% increase, stock options. At the bottom of the page, in small print, reports directly to Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Daniel Hawk. My eyes landed on a familiar name, Vera Bell, number 041, Gavin Rhodes, store manager. I used to think I'd feel vindicated, standing above Gavin, but the first emotion I felt was amusement. The same man who had been so obsessed with maintaining control that he forged my approvals was now going to have to send me weekly updates. "I'll take the role," I said, "but I'd like 2 weeks before the announcement goes public. I have a few things to wrap up at the store." Lydia nodded without question. Daniel closed the folder with a quiet snap, like sealing a contract. Outside, Seattle was drizzling, that kind of faint rain that doesn't require an umbrella, but makes everyone else walk faster. I didn't. I paused in front of the building's glass wall, catching my reflection. Old wool coat, hair in a low bun, worn leather bag. I didn't look like a regional director, but I knew exactly who I was, and this time, I wasn't letting anyone else define that for me. I scheduled my first official meeting for Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. Location, Conference Room B, the same place I'd signed my termination just 3 days earlier. I remember taking my store keys off the ring when I left that day. No one knew that moment was my silent goodbye. Not a farewell from someone who was leaving, but from someone who was about to return. Gavin definitely didn't know. He thought I was gone, or better yet, deleted, like a corrupted file during a system cleanup. What he didn't realize was that I never left the system. I just stepped back long enough for them to forget how much they'd need me. Later that afternoon, Lydia called. "We've had our first reaction from the Portland store," she said, the amusement clear in her voice. "Gavin Rhodes called our office. He's claiming there's been a miscommunication regarding your appointment. I smiled, quietly. Lydia could probably hear the breath I didn't bother holding back. What did you tell him? I asked. I didn't, she replied. I forwarded the call to internal comms. They're currently drafting your spotlight for next month's employee newsletter. I laughed, not from pride, but because I knew exactly what Gavin was doing in that moment, digging through every report that ever had my name on it, reading every email, every memo, every policy I'd authored but he'd ignored, searching for the point where he lost control. But there was nothing for him to find, because the truth doesn't live in documents. It lives in how people remember you when you're no longer in the room. And the people I worked with hadn't forgotten. That night, I opened my suitcase and laid out 3 new outfits on the bed: a burgundy blazer, an ivory blouse, and black heels, 2 inches higher than I was used to. The kind of wardrobe I used to think was for other people. People who didn't spend 10-hour shifts on their feet in a stockroom. But this time, I wasn't walking into the room as someone they could write off. This time, I was the one making the decisions. Gavin didn't respond right away. His hand was still resting on the presentation remote, like he was about to click to the next slide, even though the presentation had ended 15 seconds ago. I looked directly at him. No tilt of the head, no lean forward. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the air conditioner, stretching the silence like a thread no one dared cut. Finally, Gavin spoke. His voice was lower than usual, like he was trying to keep something from rising up his throat. With all due respect, I believe this decision. I'm not here to debate, I cut in steady. I'm here to rebuild what you've quietly let rot. I pulled another sheet of paper from my folder and placed it gently on the table. This is customer feedback from the past 6 months. 42% of dissatisfied responses contain the phrase, lack of staff support. Do you know what that means, Gavin? He didn't answer, just blinked, faster than usual. I tilted my head slightly and lowered my voice. It means you drained your team dry. You pushed out experienced employees. You left the new ones flailing in a pool with no lifeguard, while you stood on the edge snapping photos of your KPI dashboards. I saw his throat tighten as he swallowed. His left hand started fiddling with the edge of his blazer, a nervous tic I recognized from the days he used to get challenged in meetings and couldn't quite hold the floor. Ma'am, Director Doyle, he corrected himself, trying to sound composed. I think we both want what's best for the store, and if there are areas where my leadership has fallen short, I'm willing to improve. I pressed my lips together. I'd expected that answer. Of course he wouldn't resign. Not yet. People like Gavin don't fear being wrong. They fear losing control. Then you've chosen option 2, I said with a small nod. Starting today, you'll follow a structured recovery plan under direct supervision. Each week, I expect a transparent report, not flashy slides, but actual metrics, staffing stability, customer satisfaction, and purchase order accuracy. Any deviations, come straight to my desk. He nodded stiffly, didn't look at me, didn't look at anything, just nodded like one of those little bobbleheads on a car dashboard. I closed my folder and stood. This meeting is over. I wish you a productive week. I didn't say another word, but as I stepped out of the room, I caught a glimpse of Gavin's reflection in the glass wall, still seated, both hands on the table, staring ahead like he was trying to trace the exact moment when everything began to slip from his grasp. 6 weeks passed, quietly on the outside, but each day carried the sound of something cracking. Not from me, from inside Gavin. He still showed up to meetings on time, still wore perfectly tailored suits, still used phrases like action plan and cost optimization as if nothing had shifted. But it was the things he didn't say, the ones he couldn't say, that made the room go still every time I walked in. I started by bringing back Walter Keene to warehouse operations, a man who'd spent over 2 decades mastering a storage system most people dismissed as outdated. But it worked. When I called to offer him the job, Walter didn't ask about the salary. He didn't ask about the title. He just said, "As long as I don't report to that guy." And I nodded, "You'll report to me." Then came Nancy Foreman, the woman who used to be the soul of our customer service team, until she was quietly edged out with a performance improvement plan that everyone knew was a setup. Now she returned to lead new hire training. On her first day, I watched her standing in the training room, holding a sample lipstick in her hand. Her eyes lit up like 30 years of quiet disappointment had never happened. I promoted Luis Tron to interim floor manager, the one decision Gavin couldn't hide his reaction to. At the team meeting, he barely masked the frown that flickered across his face, but I saw it. Of course I did. Luis didn't have an MBA. He didn't speak in metrics or market forecasts, but he had something Gavin never learned. He listened, without getting defensive. In one of our weekly meetings, Gavin suggested shortening the trial area consultation time to improve customer turnover. Luis was the only one to push back, not loudly, not confrontationally. Just this: if no one takes the time to guide them, they won't come back. Every walkout without a purchase is a drop in brand trust. I let him finish, then nodded, "Exactly. And trust is the one thing we can't keep in inventory." I never brought up the past with Gavin, not once. Not when he submitted reports late, not when he forgot to sign the inventory logs. I just sent a brief reminder. No emotion, no edge. I let the results speak instead. In 6 weeks, customer satisfaction jumped 12%. Staff began proposing their own solutions instead of waiting for approval. For the first time, the shift schedule had 0 complaints about fairness, but there was one metric that didn't appear in any report. I saw it only in their eyes. The old crew, the ones who had been pushed out, now realizing that the very system that once discarded them was the same one now asking for their help to survive. I didn't return to teach Gavin a lesson, but maybe the lesson had started finding him on its own. Gavin walked out of my office without a door slam, without a thank you. And that was fine. He left a white envelope on the table, his resignation letter, typed cleanly, concisely, with not a single word more than necessary. Just like the way he used to manage, tidy, efficient, and utterly devoid of humanity. I didn't read it again. I didn't need to know where he was going or who had offered him a new role. I held on to one simple fact. He left without burning anything on his way out. And to me, that was enough. Luis was in the hallway as Gavin passed by. He gave a small nod, no smirk, no bitterness, just a quiet acknowledgement, not for the man, but for the chapter that had closed behind him. I remembered a winter afternoon the year before, Nancy sitting alone in the break room, unclipping her name badge from her uniform. She'd just been handed a performance improvement plan, a thinly veiled exit slip. I asked her, "Is there anything I can do?" She shook her head. "You've done enough. Just keep holding on to what you know is right. I don't have the energy anymore." When Gavin left, I thought of that moment, and I understood something. Some people leave because they're pushed. Others, like me, stay to push back and reset the system. At the next weekly meeting, I sat in the conference room with the department leads. No one mentioned Gavin. Neither did I. Instead, I laid out the next 90 days, new training modules, a rebuilt feedback system, and one small initiative I hoped would become something bigger. Listening hours, every Friday afternoon. No agenda, no pretext, just a space where any team member could talk to a manager because they wanted to, not because they had to. Luis raised his hand first. "Can I ask something off topic?" I nodded. "Did you ever think about leaving the system?" I paused. The whole room was waiting. I glanced around, saw Nancy scribbling notes, Walter nodding slowly, Emily sipping tea with a soft smile. I used to think the system didn't need me anymore, I said. But then I realized nothing gets rebuilt if everyone walks away. Sometimes, at the end of the day, I sit alone in my new office on the 15th floor, a quiet corner with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Union, where the city lights ripple gently across the water. No checkout calls, no inventory discrepancies, no mispriced invoices, just me and silence. I don't use that time to tally up accomplishments. I use it to read staff messages. One line from Luis. Today was the first time a new hire asked me how to handle a customer yelling. I think we're starting to learn how to stand our ground. One from Walter. Thank you for letting me return to where I belong. And one from a young associate named Olivia, someone I've never met face to face. Just wanted to say, it makes me proud to work somewhere led by someone like you. I remember the day I walked out of that conference room. Just me, a white envelope, and no one saying good luck. Back then, I truly thought everything I stood for could be erased with a single signature. But now I understand. Real value doesn't come from contracts. It comes from how people treat each other when no one's watching. I didn't rebuild the system out of bitterness. I rebuilt it through quiet choices, through listening, through small decisions that people like Gavin Rhodes would never consider strategy. I never made anyone say sorry. I just moved things back to where they belonged. The greatest recognition I've received in 19 years didn't come as a title or a plaque. It came in the form of knowing I can look someone in the eye, someone who was once cast out, and say, this time, we're not repeating the same mistakes. I was once removed from the system because they thought I was unnecessary. Now, I'm the one redesigning it, so that people like me, like Nancy, like Walter, will never again be someone's idea of expendable. No speeches, no revenge. Just an office with a door that stays open, and a leader who remembers deeply what it feels like to be shut out of the room.